Mel, you were missed last night at Minion.
Last night. Yeah.
You had a busy day. Marty reported, and therefore that's why you couldn't make it.
Very, very busy.
Right.
Especially, but I just got to complete one thing. You know, I don't know if they told your story with the Board of Education in New York City was hacked with the pensions.
Oh my.
And so to send out a notice, I mean, so you got to redo for the pension, you got to redo possibly people stole, you know, credit cards.
Oh really?
30 numbers, skates, you know.
Oh, what a
whole
agmas nefesh that you don't need.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the real agmas nefesh.
Right. I have my car, so I will bring you home, and then I have to go to the doctor's. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we were going to get rolling. I know Marty is here, and I think that's it. I was just saying, Bob is left, and everyone is left, right? And Michael's still away. Do we know when he's going to be back?
He spoke to me yesterday.
Yeah.
He expects to be back today. Tomorrow he has
doctor's
a pre-op on a surgery, so he won't probably be here.
Okay. Well, we've got to start working on a new schedule. I'll speak to Shimon Green too. Okay, learning sponsors. Year of Learning, Friends of Leonie Meiselman, Leah Sabra Bas Chanuch Zundel, Friends of Melaskotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lippman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pinchas, Friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, Friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, Friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Eliyahu Ben Yosef Kohen, those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Malkabat, Meshulam Yisachar. A month of learning by Malki and Rabbi Dr. Yankee Honig, in memory of her father, Yosef Ben Yecheskel Yehuda, Marsha Federbush, in memory of her husband, Oriel Pinchas Ben Orav Shimon, Gary and Marsha Schrager, in memory of his parents, Freda Bat Hendel and David Ben Yosef. A week of learning again by Marsha Federbush, in memory of her mother, Chaya Elkabas Moshe Akiva, Shelley and Oscar Moll, in memory of her father, Shlomo Reuben Ben Yamin. And we have a day of learning today, the 9th of August, right? Or is today the 8th? No, today's the 9th, right? By Toby and Gary Greenstein, no relation, in memory of her father, Yosef Menachem Ben Nachum. Okay, may the Shabbos have an aliyah, crank or a fear about the Yeshua Shematzliah. Hope B'nai Israel a good gebencht, yeah. Okay. Anybody on? Oh, Bob, good morning. Hope you got to New Jersey safe and sound. Well, he's connecting. You got to New Jersey safe and sound. Good. Okay. All right. So, as I contacted the office yesterday, I sent them an email to please include in the bulletin for this Shabbos, and that is on Thursday, that the Siyum is Monday, 4 o'clock, Century Grill. Okay? And my buddy, Rabbi Kranzler, wants me to do a whole, says to me, oh, let's show them a video of how a get is carried out. So I went looking for a video the other day. Okay, if anybody is interested, I'll send you the link to the video that you can watch it. It goes through the whole get procedure. I'm also going to look in my old files to see if I have any. I don't think I have a get there.
Is that the video of Mako or Brooklyn?
Okay, I don't know. Okay. All right, we've got a lot of Gemara to cover today, but not a lot of time, right? Okay. I want us to, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday, more or less, with Ra. Are you giving that out to Tzvi, or are you just changing money while you're here? Okay. Just to give it.
Only from here.
Yeah. Okay. We saw at the end of we did not finish this discussion as to the whole issue of a t'nai. Okay. And we concluded with the point that we said that there was a clear distinction between Abaye and Rav. Okay, Abaye made it very clear that any t'nai that would be a prohibition against something in the Torah, he would consider an exaggerated t'nai, and therefore he would consider that t'nai null and void, but the get would be valid. Okay, whether it was fulfilled. Okay, Rava, on the other hand, we saw was of a different opinion. Okay, he felt that if there were certain prohibitions against the Torah, the example like eating pork on the part of the woman, okay, that still tonight needed to be fulfilled for the get to be satisfied, okay, even though it's a prohibition against the Torah, and the woman would get malchus. Okay? The Gemara then went on to focus on the question of when this t'nai is presented, and whether it's oral or whether it's written. Okay, if it's written, the question is it before the Torah or after the Torah? Okay, if it's oral, the same thing seemed to be implied. So Rava basically had three views. Okay, one, if it's before the Torah, we did not accept it. If it's after the Torah, we accept it. If it's after the Torah and it's oral, that was a problem. But if it was after the Torah and written, that was acceptable. Okay. In other words, the t'nai was accepted. Okay. So that was where we were. That was sort of where we were holding at the end of yesterday. So if we go to Pei Hey, top of the Amud, right? Well, I'm just going to go back. Umatnitin de Katani Ktavo. And our Mishnah, where it said that it was written into the get, Va'okimna bachutz, and according to our Mishnah, we said that it dealt with the issue of an exception, right? Right? That was one thing. Aval almanat, but where the language of the Mishnah could be interpreted to deal with almanat, in other words, conditional, lo, psil, it's not considered to be invalid. Okay, in other words, it would not invalidate the get. Okay, so here I'm going to pick up now second line on Pei Hey, right? Amud Aleph. Ibaya Ema. Therefore, I might ask, Lefnei HaTorah, okay, is what about the fact that if the condition is written in before the Torah? Okay, so therefore we saw that was going to be problematic.
No,
right?
According to the Rabbanon, would be good.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm going to clarify. V'Rabbanan, but that would seem to be valid according to Rabbanan, right? Right. All right. So v'ibayat ema. But if you want, I would ask again. La'achar haTorah, divrei hakol. In other words, if it was written after the Torah, not only Rabbanan, but Rava would also accept it. Okay? So that's where we make the distinction. Now we pick up, okay? V'Rava Amar, says Rava, machloket la'achar haTorah, that the actual, according to Rava, okay, about 4 lines down there, Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Is as follows. It's after the Torah. And remember we said the Torah we're suggesting that that's the main or key section of the get, where it gives his name, her name.
That's the Torah.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay.
Okay? The Torah is the main important section of the get that gives his name, her name, his from where he's from, where she's from, and the date. Okay? So what happens? V'Rava amar machloket lachar haTorah. The Rebbe Savar, Gazrinan atu lifnei haTorah. Why? Because Rebbe is of the opinion that we make a gezerah, that the rabbis can be mafkin the kedushin. All right, if the Tanai is before the Torah, v'Rabbanan savrei lo gazrinan atu lifnei haTorah. Okay, and the rabbis held the opinion that we don't make this gezerah about hafkat kedushin, okay, lest, in other words, even though you might say it's acceptable to do it afterwards, Rebbe was concerned that the scribe might do it before. Okay, the rabbi said, no, we don't think the scribe is going to do that. Aval lifnei haTorah, divrei hakol pasul. But if it was written before the Torah, everybody would say that the get is invalid. Okay? Umatnitin, the Katani Ktavo, but our Mishnah, where it discusses the fact that it says it was written, in other words, the Tanai was written into the get, Va'okimna bachutz, and we established that the language of our Mishnah was, in one hand, chutz, namely making this more than a Tanai, but a clear exception, right? Aval almanat lo pasil. We said with that Mishnah that if it was simply a condition, it would not render the get invalid. Okay? Achar haTorah. After the Torah, the Rabbanan. And if it's done after the Torah, then that was clearly the view of the rabbis. Now, going on. Tane Avuha de Rabbi Avin. It was taught by the father of Rabbi Avin. Kame de Rabbi Zera, in front of Rabbi Zera. Katav get al Tnai. Okay, so we're going to hold that this is the view now of Rabbi Zera. Okay, if the get was written with a condition, divrei hakol pasul. Rabbi Zera says no. Everybody agrees that the get is invalid. Okay, divrei hakol pasul, asks the Gemara. Does everybody really agree that the get is invalid? Vaham miflag plige. But here the Gemara has already been discussing with us that there's this machloket between Rabbanan and Rebbe. Okay? Ela ema. But rather I would say, liv divrei hakol kasher. That everybody would say it's valid, that it's a valid get with a Tanai. Now, we've got a problem here because Rabbi Zera just amended, okay, our Mishnah, okay, and amended our Braita. Vehechidami, how is that possible? La'achar haTorah. We're talking about a situation where any condition was written after the Torah, after the main section. V'lema harei zeh pasul. Rebbe. So let us say, though, instead of amending Rabbi Zera, the text, why don't we simply say that any condition that is written into the get renders the get pasul, and the Rebbe, and that is according to Rebbe. Okay? Therefore, we could deduce from that, okay, that the opposite, that the Rabbanan held the opposite way. Tana davrei hakol, but we teach Habriut according to everybody, atniya, okay, that I could make this condition, okay. So you have a concern. Okay, why did Rabbi Zera amend the text? Okay, the Gemara is going to say that now I could make it a right kasher bepasul. Okay, michlefle, namely, it's possible for a Tana to get mixed up between who says what's kasher and who says what's pasul. Harei ze b'divrei hakol. Okay, and therefore that's why he said it's according to everybody. Lo machlifle. But when you say, okay, that the Tana says everybody either agrees or don't agree, that kind of a decision the Tana is not going to get confused about. Okay, all right. Now we go on. Okay, and we see a new Mishnah. Hare at muteret l'chol adam. You are permitted to marry any man. Ela la'aba ula'avich, with the exception, okay, of father or my father or your father, said the divorcing husband. La'achi ula'achich, my brother or your brother, said the divorcing husband. La'eved ula'oved kochavim, to a slave or a Gentile. Ula'chol mi she'em la'alav kiddushin. Okay, now, and to anyone in which you cannot have a valid betrothal, kasher, that get would be valid. Okay, now, why might that get be valid? Because really, in a sense, there's no real condition, no real t'nai in these statements. She's certainly not going to. Right, she's not going to marry her father, her father-in-law, her brother, her brother-in-law. Okay, because clearly that they are arayas and they're asa from the Torah. Number two, she's not going to marry an Eved, okay, because that's asa. She's not going to marry a Gentile. Again, that's forbidden, okay? And she's not going to marry anybody who hasn't given a betrothed her, all right? So what happens? Hare at muteret l'chol adam. Okay, now what about another possibility? You are permitted to marry any man, l'chol adam, ela almana l'kohen gadol, with the exception of a widow to a high priest. Grusha v'chalutza l'kohen hedyat. Okay, a divorcee or a woman who had chalitza to a regular kohen. Mamzeret unetina liYisrael. Okay, an illegitimate woman or a woman who was of Gibeonite heritage to a regular Israelite. Bat Yisrael mamzer l'natin. Okay, a Jewish woman to a illegitimate, more than just illegitimate, or to a Gibeonite man. V'chol mi sheyesh la'alav kiddushin afilu ba'avera, and anyone that has already a betrothal, even as in a transgression, then pasul, it would be illegitimate. It would be invalid. Why? Right? The issue here is that these weddings, these marriages, are what we'll call restricted marriages. Restricted in the sense that they are prohibited with a lav from the Torah. However, were the marriage to take place, the marriage is tofsi. Okay? So that is the question. So it doesn't prevent, okay, the get of that nature doesn't prevent the marriage from taking place and being considered a valid marriage.
What if one of these incest things, they take place inadvertently? Like,
right, but the problem of inadvertence is the fact that there has to be two people involved. Well, she may be willing to be over on the Torah.
I'm saying, what if a brother and sister separate while they're young and they don't know each other? Later on,
good question. Okay, there's a famous story about that, connected with Tisha B'Av, okay, that we just observed. All right, and what happens? That they were captured, okay, by different owners, okay, and then one says to the other, oh, I've got this beautiful young woman, I got this handsome young, okay, servant, let's put them together. They put them in jail together.
But they find out.
And they recognized each other, and they decided, no, they would not do it. Okay, that's the case. All right, so now the Gemara says, Klala Deresha, the general principle of the earlier part, La'atui Sha'ar Chayve Kritut. Okay, that would include, right, any other obligations because of the fact that there's any erva, there is the karet penalty. All right, so what happens? Right, Klala de Sefer, the general principle with regards to the second set in the Mishnah, La'atui Sha'ar Chiyuvei Lavin. Okay, that would include, that would exclude, okay, any of these other examples of marriages where there is a lesser lav. In other words, it's a lav from the Torah, but it's not necessarily as stringent. For example, and here we have a problem with the nusach, kigon amani, amoni, umoavi, netini, mitzri, ve'edomi. Okay, so that's a girsa issue. Going on. Ba'mine rava miravnach. Okay, so you've listed, says Rava, all of these examples where on the one hand we have an erva situation, on the other hand, okay, and therefore the get would be valid. On the other hand, we have a love situation where since the marriage is tofsin, okay, we see that the get is not valid. What about the following scenario? Okay, and he asks, what about marriage to a minor? Okay, to a katan. Chutz mikadei kedushi katan mahu. What's the situation? And we're going to look at this from two perspectives. Mi amrinan hashta. Do we say that now, miha lav bar havyahu, that he is not able to make a kedushin, right? Produce kedushin, or dilma, or do we say ate leklau havya? Okay, that eventually he would fall under this general principle because he would be old enough in the future to be able to make a kedushin. Okay, so what happens? Rav Nachman answers him. Amarle tinitua, we learned this. We had a Mishnah that taught us Ktana mitgareshet b'kiddushay aviha, that a minor girl is divorced through the efforts of her father. That was a Kedushin Deoraita, and it's the father then, okay, assuming that the father is alive, that he is the one who receives the get. Okay? Were the father to be deceased,
she could receive the get.
She could receive the get, exactly. Amai, how do we understand this? Vahabeinen v'yatsa v'haita. But don't we have a requirement that the same way she exits the marriage, that's how she enters the marriage, right? Ella, rather, this is the situation. Achel klau havaya. But this does come to be included under the principle of coming into the marriage. Hachanami achel klau havaya. Here too, okay, it's only under that situation. Only divorceable if she's able to remarry. Chutz min hanoladim. What happens if he made the condition that she could marry anyone except for those being born? Mahu. What's the situation? Hashta miha lo it yalid. Now it's possible that fetus is not come into the world yet. Odilma atide demit yalid. Or perhaps it's going to be a current fetus.
It will be born.
And will be born, and therefore that's the potential. Amarle tinitua. He said, we learned that. Le'eved oved kochavim. We said In that case, we use the example from our Mishnah about marrying a servant or a Gentile. Im ita, okay? Right? If you're going to use that as your example and say the future status of somebody is not what we're going to consider, how about the following argument? All right? Imita, if that's the case, Eved v'oved kochavim, nami avide demi gaire. It's possible if you're going to include future status, maybe that servant would be freed and he'd be Jewish, or the Gentile will convert. Hinach lav igure kaime. Okay? In these cases, we're not considering the possibility of conversion, okay, because it's not taking place now. All right? Hani le'it kaime. But in terms of fetuses, it's very clear that they could be born now or shortly thereafter. And so there is a possible future to deal with there. Okay? What about the following? Okay, if I include the condition chutz mi ba'al achota, with the exception of her brother-in-law, the husband of her sister, okay, which we know again is forbidden from the erva. Mahu, what's the status? Hashta, now, miha lo chazyale, now, nevertheless, he's not suitable for her for marriage at all. O Dilma, or perhaps we say again, future, current, in other words, the future status. Zimnin demeta achota. There are times when maybe her sister might die. V'chazyale, and then he would be suitable and eligible for her for marriage. Amarle tinituha. Here too, he tells him, right? We've learned this. Again, le'eved u'le'oved kochavim. In that example also. They are currently not viable options. Okay? Eved v'ovedu kochavim, nami avide de megaire. Again, I'll use the argument. If I'm considering the future, it's possible their status will change, and therefore they would be eligible for marriage, just like her brother-in-law's status could change and be eligible. So the answer the Gemara gives, gerut lo shchicha. Conversion is not such a common phenomenon. Mita shchicha. Death, however, is a fairly common phenomenon. Okay? All right. Chutz mizanotaya. Let's assume that he said, here's your get, with the exception of my providing your foodstuffs. Mahu, what's the situation? Binisu'in. We can understand that in regards to marriage. Ha lo shi'er. That would not be then a remnant, okay, or a residual item that would mean that there would still be no kritus, okay? Ha lo shi'er, here where there's no residual item. O dilma shi'er babia, or perhaps we would say, what about the fact that he still, okay, even though he's not providing her foodstuffs, he might still have relations with her. Amarle tinituha. Okay, we learned this. La abba ula avich. Okay, once he no longer takes on the responsibility of mizonot, okay, it's very clear that their relationship is being severed. Okay, ubamai, and what about that? Ilema b'nesuin. If we're talking about that example, all right, with marriage, Abba va'avich b'nei nisuin minhu, okay, is a father or father-in-law eligible for marriage? Ela lav biznut? No, there's only that possibility that there would be a relationship there illegitimately through promiscuity. Ula abba ula avich. But with the father or the father-in-law, again, there's no residual aspect. There is, right? Right? So what happens? But with somebody else, there would be a residual aspect. Dilma b'nisuin. perhaps then we're talking about an example with marriage, right? De avar ve'insi, that maybe she nevertheless transgressed and got married. Chutz mishalo midarka mahu. So let's give another example. Okay, what happens if we say it's a valid get unless she does has sexual behavior in a normal, regular way? Bikidarka. No, we're talking about normal methods. Ha lo shier. There again, there would be no residual result. O dilma, or perhaps mishkavei ishakati, or perhaps he's talking about another kind of relationship. Chutz me hafarat nidareha. Let's try another case. What happens if he gives the get, okay, and it says, you're divorced from me, but I'm still going to be able to nullify your vows. Okay? Mahu, what's the situation? Benisuin, in regards to marriage, ha lo shier. Okay? That would not be, okay, anything residual. In other words, the marriage would be considered.
She could marry anybody else.
Right, dissolve.
Even.
Right. Oh, Dilma, perhaps we have a part of the pasuk. Isha yakimenu v'isha yafarenu. The husband maintains the vow, or the husband nullifies the vow.
So then he is retaining.
Right. So then maybe that would tell us that he could use that as a tanai. Right. What happens? Kati. Okay. No, that doesn't work. Let's take another possibility. Chutz mi trumotaya. What about that? Using that as the t'nai of the exception. Mahu. What's the situation? Benisuin ha lo shier. With marriage, again, we say that's not, okay, the marriage is dissolved, but he would still want to continue, right? As a Kohen, allowing her or not. Truma, right? O Dilma, perhaps we have a pasuk. Kinyan kaspo kativ. Okay, maybe that pasuk would allow him to use that as a t'nai. That's not the case. Chutz mi yerushatayach. Okay, you have the get, except no heirs. Okay, mahu. What's the situation? Bin nisuin halo shier. Again, with regards to marriage, okay, we say that's not residual. It doesn't maintain a relationship. O Dilma, or perhaps the she'ero v'yarash ota. Pasuk again, that would seem to imply that he is the closest relative and should inherit her. No. Okay, again, chutz mi kedusha b'shtar. Okay, I give you a get, but with the condition that you cannot be betrothed using a document, right? What's the problem? Mahu, what is the status? Mi amrinan avshar de mikadesh la b'kesef ubabiyah. Isn't it possible that we say that fine, she could still fulfill the requirement of the condition because she could have betrothal through a different means, okay? Not through a document, right? O Dilma, or perhaps V'yatza v'haita, okay? Itkish havaya lahadade, okay? That we say the same way she enters. In other words, if she had married the first husband or betrothed the first husband with a shtar, maybe that's got to be the same case afterwards, okay? No, says the Gemara, we could make that connection. The answer is teku, okay? We don't have a final statement. But remember, when there's a teku in this regarding an isur, we decide the chumrah. Okay, our new Mishnah. Okay, by the way, then she would need a second get. Okay, mat nidin, our new Mishnah. Gufo shall get. Here we're going to get to talking about the contents of the gittin. I did not have a chance, but I will this afternoon look to see. I don't know why I might have a get in any of my.
You also have the picture of the gift.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. All right. Gufo shall get harei at muteret lechol adam. That the essential phrase it would apply, okay, is you are permitted to any other man. Now, there's a problem with this Mishnah. What's the problem? We just got through saying that the tofes, right, is the essential part, and that had to have the names and locations and date. The Mishnah doesn't say that. Okay? So we'll try to clarify what's the situation.
What the Mishnah could be saying is the group of the Torah.
Good point, Reuven. Okay, that in essence, aside from that, we assume that information is going to be included in the gift. But what the direct implication, like you say, of the Torah statement is he must totally have kritut, permit here to anyone, and have no longer any connection with them. So what happens? Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Okay, so now the preparation I was doing says, is Rabbi Yehuda adding something to the language here? Or is he saying that this language is an alternative? Okay, why could it be an alternative? Because what language is Harei at muteret lechol adam? That's Hebrew. What happens if they write it in Aramaic? Right? Well, we'll see.
He says the article is adding, not.
I know. Okay, but he wanted to add it. In other words, so therefore, according to that explanation, you'd have to have it in Hebrew and in Aramaic. Okay, if you say it's an alternative, okay, all you need was one. But what would be Rabbi Yehuda's statement? V'den, okay, here, dahave lichi mina, that you have from me, okay, sefer teruchim, v'igeret shavukim. You have a document of teruchin, of separation, okay, and a note of shavukin, of almost abandonment, v'get peturim, and a document again that separates, right? Lemehach, okay, and from here, lehitnasba lechol gavar diyit savayin. You are able to marry any male or any individual that you choose. Okay. Now, let's see, man. What?
Individual gets into transgender. Yeah.
Okay, any male, right? Gufo shall get shichrur. What about the document of freeing a slave? Harei at bat chorin. If you say you are a free woman, okay, harei at la'atzmech. Or if you say you are now under your own responsibility. Okay. Now, what is the Gemara going to tell us? The Gemara is going to now go into quickly a discussion. There's one language for freeing a servant. There's another language for a divorce. What happens if you accidentally reverse the languages? Okay. Pshita, is that obvious? Amarla leishto. He says to his wife, Harei at bat chorin. What if he says to his wife, you are now a free woman? Okay. Lo amar velo klum. It's like he said nothing. Amar la l'shifchato. Or if he says to his female servant, Harei at muteret lechol adam. You're permitted to any man. Lo amar velo klum. It's like he said nothing. In other words, the language has to reflect the nature of the relationship. That's what the Gemara is telling us. Okay? Amar la leisha. He says to the woman, Harei at la'atzmeh, that you're now on your own. Mahu, what's the status? Legamre ka'amar la. Has he said this to her completely? In other words, does that really imply divorce? Oh, or perhaps lemelacha ka'amar, that he's only referring to her handiwork. Namely, you're going to keep whatever you make, and from that money, you're going to pay for your own support. Okay? Maybe that's what he's saying. Amar le Ravina le Rav Ashi, says to Rav Ashi, Tashma, Titnan. Listen, that because we have a Mishnah that teaches, Gufo shall get shichrur, the essence of a document of release. Hare at bat chorin, you are a free woman. Hare at la'atzmech, you are on your own. Uma avda dekani le gufe. Okay, and what do we say here then in regards to a servant, okay, who acquires his own self, in other words, who is able to free himself? Ki amale, because he says to him, Hare at la'atzmech. Says, then you are on your own. Kane gufe. They've acquired their self. Isha delo kane gufa. But a woman a wife is not able to acquire herself. Lo kol
doesn't acquire the wife.
Right? In other words, lo kol shekain. But aren't we going to argue, okay, isn't that all the more possible for a wife to free herself, to get released? Amarle Ravina le Rav Ashi. Okay, so what does he tell him? Okay, so here's about this question of release. Amarle la avdo. He says to his servant, Ainli asek bach. I have nothing more to do with you. Mahu, what's the situation? Amarle Rav Chanan le Rav Ashi. And Rav Chanan says to Rav Ashi, Va'amre la Rav Chanan Michozana'a, the Rav Ashi. And others say it was a different Rav Chani. Okay? Tashma. Listen to the following, Tanya, because we have a bright. Hamocher avdo le'oved kochavim, one who sells his servant to a Gentile. Yatsa lecherut. Okay, ultimately, the servant goes free. V'tzarich get shichrur mirabo rishon, but he requires a document of release from his first owner. Amar Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he explains, B'med varim amurim, shelo katav alav ono, that he did not write for him a ono. Aval katav alav ono, but if he wrote for him an ono, zehu shichruro, that then is a valid sign or document, if I can use that term momentarily, of freedom. And so the Gemara asks, my ono? What do we mean by an ono? Amar Rav Sheshitz, the katavle, that he wrote to him for the servant, l'kshet tivrach mimenu, if you're able to flee from that new Gentile owner, right? Ainli asek bach, I will have nothing more to do with you. Okay, so that's the ono. Okay, now coming back to our Mishnah. Rav Yehuda Omer, Rav Yehuda says as follows, that he suggests that we add or an alternative language to the Hebrew. V'den dahave lichi minai sefer teruchin ve'igeret shavuki. Okay, now what happens? B'mai kemiflagei. What then is the argument between Rav Yehuda and Tanakama, right? Rabbanan, who we're going to say probably reflects the view of Tanakama, Savre, Yadayim, She'ein Mochichot, Havyan Yadayim. Okay, that Yadayim here, remember we had Yad regarding Neder and things like that. Okay, we're going to call that an abbreviated or a statement or a nickname in other words, if you don't say it explicitly, right, that are not clarified, but you could understand it from the context of the situation, all right, Havyan Yadayim, they are going to be considered valid, right? Va'afal gav the lo katav la, and even though it's not written vidan, okay, in other words, in here, mochacha milta, okay, it's clear proof. The Baha'i Gita kamigaresh la, that with that get he is, or document, he is divorcing her. The Rabbi Yehuda Sava, but I'm going to translate the vav here. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion, Yadayim she'ein mochichot lo havyan yadayim, that a non-explicit, okay, reference, okay, does not spell out validity. Vitama, why? The katav la vidan. Why? Because he wrote vidin, and here.
That's why he has to write vidin, because it's not clear.
Right. Why? It's not written. Vidin, writing, and here, dimuchacha milta, the Baha'i Gita kamigare shla, because by writing and here, in other words, as if here is the document, this is clear proof that he is divorcing her. Avalo katav la vidan. But if he doesn't write here and here, right? Amre b'dibura gersha. We might say that he was only divorcing her orally, right? Ushtara raya ba'alma. And then the document is simply further proof, okay? It's like no different than if I say to Ruvain, let me borrow $500 from you. And he says, sure, okay? And then the end of the week, he says, here's, and I wrote out this IOU that you owe me $500.
Oh, no.
Okay? All right? So what happens, right? Amar Abaye. Okay, so that's our concern. Says Abaye as follows. Hi man de katav gita. We had a certain situation, right? So where one writes out a get, right? Lo lichtov vadin. He should not write it vadin with vav dalad yud nun. The mashma vadin. Why? Because we could understand it as a different word. Okay? Ela vav dalad nun. You should write it without the yud. Okay? Because we could read it vidin and it's a law. Okay? So as if to imply there's a legal challenge. V'lo lichtov igeret with a yud. The mashma igeret. Why? Because then we might understand it as garta, okay, or as a roof, right? Ella without the yud, igeret. And by the way, most of the time the word is written in the Torah,
Without
it's
a
chaser, without a yud, okay? V'lo lichtav lemihach, he shouldn't write it lamed yud mem hey chaf. Why? The mashma, why? Because it could be understood as li mehach, me from here. V'lo lichtav lemachach, he shouldn't write it that way. Why? The mashma ki chicha, right? You might understand it as if he's a joke, right? And when you write diyit hayviyun, diyit savyun, spell it with tlata, right? Tlata yudin. Spell it out with 3 yuds in it. Why? Otherwise, the mashma, all right? Tahayvyun, but titzavyun. In other words, the yat seyavun means you choose. But the other way spelling it would be just more generic. It would be, you would be, or you would want, went. In other words, saying, well, any widow, any divorcee is in this status, okay? V'liyorche, and when you write v'liyorche, levav, lengthen, okay, the vav, the tiruchin, in the word tiruchin. Why should you lengthen it? So it doesn't look like a yud, right? V'levav the shivukim, and also lengthen the vav in the word shivukim, so it doesn't look like a yud. The mashma, why? Because otherwise it would appear to be trichin v'shavikim, which again is a generic term for how a divorcee would be described. Okay, levav, right. So let's go on. V'levaorche levav, and lengthen the vav dechado, in the word dechado. In other words, all if you're using Rabbi Yehuda's shita on all of these examples, Abaye is telling you these are the things the scribe has to be careful about in terms of his writing, okay? Because you could misread the term or misread the word, right? And there would therefore be another phrase or a different word, and therefore it would not be valid.
You still follow this today?
I would have to look at the document. Okay, right. The mashma v'chadei, and you would understand it instead of dechado, that, right, carried out, it's a different word. V'lo lichtov le'insava, and don't write it that way. The mashma, you might read it accidentally or write it as lo yitnasba, that she should not marry. Ella lehitnasba, but to become married, right? Finishing up, okay, ibayalahu. So we ask the following question. Ba'inin vidan, do we need to say and here? O lo ba'inin vidan, or don't we need it to say and here if we're using the Aramaic? Tashma, listen to the following. The itkin Rava begite, that Rava established a takana with regards to the language for the gittin, namely, right, the following, Eich plania bar plania, okay, patar v'tarich yat plonita intete, that where so-and-so, son of so-and-so. So here we get to the importance of the names, right? Patar, released, I'm going to translate that. V'tarich, okay, and sent away. Yat, you, plonita, intata, plonita is his wife, intete, his wife, dahavit, intete, min kadam dina, who was his wife from before, miyoma dinan la'olam, from this day forward. Ve'ilu vadan lo kama. And here in this kind of language, Rava did not require the phrase vidan and here. Okay? Ula ta'ameh. And according to that reasoning, right? Kulhu mikama. Do we say that this is the language? Ela ba'inen. But what we require, hachanami ba'inen. Here too. Okay, we say that. Right? We're going to stop.
Okay, Rabbi Green,
right?
we
Yeah.
We got to give the names. If one or two people, let Marty's making the list. So because we got to call out the day before.
Right. So I put that in the message for the I already for us too. Okay.
We got two people who are coming, so tell Marty two people so we can give them a figure early Sunday morning. Right.
Okay, so we'll stop right there for the 2 dots, and then we'll pick up some more tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day.
All right, take care.
I am definitely coming. I'm not sure about my wife.